What did she say?
She's just a baby. Ignore her. Sign the papers. Sir, your fiancé is lying to you.
Nobody in that mansion expected a 3-year-old child to stop a billionaire from signing away his entire life. The dinner table was silent. The lawyer stood beside the blind billionaire with a gold pen in his hand. His fiancée sat next to him, smiling softly, acting like the perfect woman who only wanted to protect him after his accident. Across the room, the maid stood frozen, holding her little daughter close, trying not to look at the papers on the table, because her toddler had seen something earlier. She had seen the fiancé take one document from the lawyer's folder and replace it with another. The blind billionaire lifted the pen. His fiancée leaned close and whispered, "Just sign here, darling, trust me." But before the pen touched the paper, the maid's little girl pulled away from her mother, ran toward the table, and cried, "Don't sign it, your fiancé is lying." The room froze. The billionaire's hand stopped in the air. His fiancée's smile disappeared. And then the little girl pointed at the papers and said, "That's not the page the lawyer gave her, she changed it." Nobody in Greystone Manor knew that the blind billionaire had learned to recognize lies without seeing faces. His name was Julian Cross. He was 35 years old, one of the richest men in Boston, and once, before the accident, people said his eyes could silence a boardroom faster than any threat. He had built Crosswell Holdings from a failing family company into a billion-dollar empire, buying broken businesses and turning them into gold. But 6 months ago, a car accident took his sight. Since then, the world had changed for him. The mansion that once felt powerful now felt too large. The hallways were too quiet. The dining room echoed. The servants whispered when they thought he could not hear. And everywhere he walked, someone tried to guide him, touch his arm, or speak to him like blindness had made him weak. Only one person in that house still spoke to him like he was whole. Her name was Naomi Carter. She was the maid, 28 years old, a black single mother with deep brown skin, tired eyes, and a soft voice that never tried to flatter him. She had worked at Greystone Manor for 3 years, cleaning rooms, preparing guest suites, polishing the long dining table, and raising her little daughter in the small staff cottage behind the garden. Her daughter Mia was only 3 years old. Mia had curly black hair, round cheeks, bright eyes, and the fearless honesty of a child who had not yet learned that rich people expected silence from the poor. She loved stickers, apple slices, and asking questions at the worst possible moments. Julian liked her. He never said it openly, but everyone knew. Whenever Mia came into the kitchen and called him Mr. J, his hard expression softened. When she asked why he used a cane, he did not get angry. He only smiled and said, "Because my eyes are resting." Mia believed him for 2 whole weeks. Then one afternoon she told him, "Your eyes are sleeping too long." For the first time after the accident, Julian laughed. Naomi had apologized quickly, embarrassed, but Julian only said, "Don't apologize, she tells the truth better than most adults." That was exactly why Julian's fiancée hated the child. Vanessa Hale was 29, beautiful, white, polished, and dangerous in the quiet way. She wore cream silk dresses, diamond earrings, and a smile so perfect that people mistook it for kindness. She had entered Julian's life before the accident, when he was still powerful, independent, and impossible to control. After the accident, she changed. Not in public. In public, Vanessa became the devoted fiancée. She held his arm at charity dinners. She spoke gently to reporters. She told everyone she had put her whole life on hold to care for Julian. But inside Greystone Manor, her patience had sharp edges. She sighed when Julian asked for documents to be read twice. She rolled her eyes when he wanted to handle company decisions himself. She corrected the staff as if she already owned the mansion. And when Mia wandered too close, Vanessa's face turned cold. "A maid's child shouldn't be running through private rooms," she once told Naomi. Naomi had lowered her head. "I'm sorry, ma'am, it won't happen again." But Mia, standing behind her mother, asked, "Why do you smile nice when Mr. J is here and mean when he's gone?" The kitchen went silent. Vanessa never forgot that. Tonight, the mansion was hosting a private signing dinner. It was supposed to be simple. Julian would sign a new management agreement giving Vanessa temporary authority over certain personal and household matters while he adjusted to life without sight. That was what she had told him. "You need help, darling," she had whispered for weeks. "Just until you're stronger." Julian had resisted at first. He did not like handing control to anyone. But Vanessa kept pushing softly, patiently, always choosing moments when he was tired. Finally, he agreed to review the papers. A lawyer arrived at 7. 2 board members came as witnesses. Dinner was served in the smaller formal dining room, where the lights were warm and the walls were lined with old family portraits Julian could no longer see. Naomi stood near the sideboard with a tray of water glasses, Mia half hidden behind her skirt. She had not wanted to bring Mia inside. But the staff sitter was sick, and Mia had cried in the cottage after hearing thunder outside. Naomi planned to keep her quiet for 10 minutes, then take her back. At the table, Vanessa sat beside Julian, one hand resting lightly on his arm. The lawyer, Mr. Ellis, opened a leather folder. "These are the final copies," he said. "Mr. Cross, I'll read the key clauses aloud before you sign." Julian nodded. "Every line that matters." Vanessa laughed softly. "Julian, don't torture the poor man. We already reviewed everything." "I said every line that matters," Julian repeated. The room grew tense. Naomi lowered her eyes, pretending not to listen. But Mia was not looking at Julian. She was looking at Vanessa. Earlier, while Naomi was helping the cook plate desserts, Mia had slipped into the hall chasing a fallen ribbon from her hair. She had seen Vanessa standing near the study door with the lawyer's folder open on a side table. Vanessa had looked around quickly, pulled one set of pages from the folder and slid another set inside. Mia did not know what those papers meant. She only knew swapping was something people did when they were hiding. Now, at the table, Vanessa leaned toward Julian and touched the gold pen near his hand. "Just sign here, darling," she said gently. "Trust me." Julian's fingers closed around the pen. Naomi felt Mia move. "Mia," she whispered. But the little girl stepped out from behind her mother. Her voice was small but clear. "Don't sign it." Everyone turned. Naomi's blood went cold. Vanessa's smile froze. Julian's hand stopped above the paper. Mia pointed at the folder with trembling fingers. "Your fiancé is lying," she cried. "That's not the page the lawyer gave her. She changed it." The room froze as if Mia's tiny voice had stolen the air from it. Naomi stood near the sideboard, her heart beating so hard she could feel it in her throat. Her daughter was only 3 years old, standing in the middle of a room full of powerful adults, pointing at the billionaire's fiancé like she had just accused a queen of stealing. For 1 second, nobody spoke. Then Vanessa laughed. It was soft, pretty, and completely false. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, tilting her head with a smile that looked kind to everyone except Naomi. "You must be confused." Mia shook her head, curls bouncing around her little face. "No, I saw you." Naomi rushed forward and grabbed her daughter's hand. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Cross." "She's tired. She doesn't understand what she's saying." But Julian did not move. The gold pen was still in his hand, hovering above the paper. His blind eyes faced the table, but his expression had changed. It was not anger. It was not embarrassment. It was focus. The kind of focus that made everyone remember he had not become a billionaire by trusting people too easily. Vanessa placed a gentle hand on his arm. "Julian, ignore this. She's a child. Children invent things." Mia frowned. "I don't invent." One of the board members shifted uncomfortably in his chair. The lawyer, Mr. Ellis, cleared his throat. "Perhaps we should pause for a moment." Vanessa's head snapped toward him. "There is no need to pause. We are in the middle of a legal signing, not a daycare performance." Naomi flinched at the words. Mia looked up at her mother. "What's daycare performance?" Naomi whispered, "Quiet, baby." Julian finally lowered the pen. The tiny click of metal touching the table sounded louder than it should have. "Mr. Ellis," he said calmly, "read the first page number." Vanessa's smile tightened. "Julian, read it." Mr. Ellis picked up the document in front of Julian. "Page 1 of 12. Julian turned his face slightly toward the lawyer. "The agreement you prepared this afternoon had how many pages?" Mr. Ellis hesitated. Vanessa's fingers tightened around the edge of the table. 10, the lawyer said slowly. A silence fell again. Naomi felt Mia press closer to her leg. Julian's voice remained calm. "So there are 2 extra pages." Vanessa laughed again, but this time it came out too sharp. "For heaven's sake, Julian, lawyers add pages all the time. Isn't that what they do?" Mr. Ellis looked offended. "Not without informing my client." Vanessa's face flushed. Julian leaned back in his chair. "Read the title of the document." Mr. Ellis looked down, his eyes narrowed. "This says, Full Durable Transfer of Personal and Corporate Authority." The board members looked at each other. Julian's jaw tightened. That is not what I agreed to sign. Vanessa sat very still. Naomi suddenly understood why her daughter had been so scared. This was not just a paper. This was power. This was Julian's life being slipped away while he sat blind at his own table. Vanessa stood, smoothing her red dress as if fixing her appearance could fix the room. This is a misunderstanding, she said. The documents must have been mixed by accident. Mia pointed again. You took the other one out. Vanessa's eyes cut to the child. Enough, the word was quiet, but it carried a threat Naomi felt in her bones. Naomi lifted Mia into her arms. Please, Miss Hale, she's only trying to— She is lying, Vanessa snapped. Mia's lip trembled. Julian's head turned toward Vanessa's voice. Do not call her a liar. Vanessa blinked, stunned. You're defending the maid's child over me? I'm asking why the document in front of me is not the document my lawyer prepared. Mr. Ellis began flipping through the pages, his face growing darker with every line. This gives Miss Hale authority over your estate accounts, he said. Access to corporate voting rights, medical decision approvals, property transfers. This is not temporary household support. One of the board members stood. Julian, if you had signed this. I know, Julian said. His voice was low now, dangerously low. Vanessa stepped toward him, changing her tone. Darling, listen to me. After the accident, you were overwhelmed. I was only trying to protect you from people who might take advantage. Naomi looked down at her faded maid uniform. People. Vanessa meant people like her. Julian smiled faintly, but there was no warmth in it. Interesting. What? You say you wanted to protect me from people taking advantage, while asking me to sign away control of everything I own. Vanessa's breathing changed. Mia suddenly whispered into Naomi's ear. Mama, she put the pages in the blue room. Naomi froze. Julian heard it. His face turned slightly toward them. What blue room? Naomi closed her eyes. The study. Vanessa stepped back. Mr. Ellis looked up. I left my folder in the study for less than 5 minutes before dinner. Julian's fingers curled against the table. Security, he said. A guard appeared at the door immediately. Lock the study, Julian ordered. No one enters. No one leaves the property. Bring me the camera footage from the hallway outside my study. Vanessa's face went pale. There are no cameras in that hallway, she said too quickly. Julian turned toward her. A slow, cold silence followed. How would you know that? He asked. Vanessa opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Mia, still held tightly in her mother's arms, looked at Julian with wide eyes and whispered, Mr. J, she's scared now. And for the first time that night, everyone at that table saw it. The perfect fiancée was not angry anymore. She was terrified. The silence after Julian's question was colder than the rain hitting the windows outside. How would you know there are no cameras in that hallway? Vanessa stood beside the dining table, one hand resting on the back of a chair, her perfect red dress suddenly looking too bright for the fear on her face. For the first time since Naomi had known her, she had no quick answer. The board members watched her carefully. Mr. Ellis still held the false document in his hands. Naomi kept Mia close to her chest, feeling her daughter's tiny heart beating fast against her own. She wanted to leave. She wanted to take Mia back to the staff cottage, lock the door, and pretend none of this had happened. But Julian's voice had stopped the whole room, and now every person inside Greystone Manor was waiting for Vanessa to explain herself. Vanessa finally forced a small laugh. Because I live here, Julian. I know this house. Is that a crime now? Julian did not respond right away. He slowly turned his face toward the sound of her voice. No, he said calmly, but lying to me might be. Vanessa's smile disappeared. Lying, she repeated. After everything I've done for you? Julian leaned back in his chair, blind eyes steady, his jaw tight. That's what we're trying to find out. The security guard returned a few minutes later with a tablet in his hand. There is footage from the corridor outside the study, he said. Vanessa's head snapped toward him. No, she said too quickly. Everyone looked at her. The guard paused. There is a small camera inside the old portrait frame across from the study door. Mr. Cross had it installed after the accident. Naomi felt Vanessa's whole body go still. Julian's voice remained calm. Play it. The guard placed the tablet in front of Mr. Ellis, who turned it so the board members could see. Julian could not see the screen, but he sat perfectly still, listening to every breath, every movement, every nervous shift around him. The video began. At first it showed an empty hallway. Then Mr. Ellis appeared, carrying his leather folder. He entered the study, placed the folder on the desk, and stepped out to answer a phone call. A minute later, Vanessa walked into view. The room stopped breathing. On the screen, she looked left, then right. Then she entered the study. Naomi covered Mia's eyes, but Mia gently moved her mother's hand away. "I saw that," Mia whispered. Vanessa's face turned red. "This proves nothing. I went in to look for Julian's reading glasses." Julian gave a humorless smile. "My reading glasses?" Vanessa realized her mistake too late. He had not used reading glasses since the accident. On the tablet, Vanessa walked out of the study holding 2 sets of papers. She slid one into a small silver clutch, then placed another set back into Mr. Ellis's folder. Mr. Ellis lowered the tablet slowly. "That is not a misunderstanding," he said. One of the board members stood up. "Julian, this is fraud." Vanessa's breathing became shallow. She looked at Julian, then at the guests, then finally at Naomi. And when she had nowhere left to run, she chose the person in the room with the least power. "She made me do it." Naomi froze. "What?" she whispered. Vanessa pointed at her. "Naomi, she knew about the documents. She's been listening outside doors for months. She told me if I didn't give her money, she would accuse me of abusing Julian after the accident." Naomi stared at her, unable to move. Mia's tiny arms wrapped around her mother's neck. "No," Mia said. "Mommy didn't." Vanessa's voice rose. "Of course she'll deny it. Look at her. She brings her child into private rooms, she listens to business conversations, she has been trying to get close to Julian since the accident." Naomi felt the old fear return. That familiar fear of rich people turning truth into something ugly. "Mr. Cross," Naomi said, her voice shaking. "I swear on my daughter, I didn't know anything about those papers." Vanessa laughed bitterly. "How convenient." Julian lifted one hand, everyone went quiet. "Naomi," he said. She swallowed. "Yes, sir?" "Did you ever ask Vanessa for money?" "No, sir." "Did you ever threaten her?" "No." "Did you know what those papers were?" "No." Mia saw her change them, that's all. Vanessa slammed her palm on the table. "You believe her because she acts helpless." Julian turned his head toward Vanessa again. "No," he said. "I believe her because she sounds afraid of losing her job. You sound afraid of losing control." Vanessa's lips parted, but no words came. Then Julian reached into the inside pocket of his jacket and pulled out a small black device. Naomi had never seen it before. Vanessa had. Her face drained of color. Julian placed it on the table. "After the accident," he said quietly, "I started recording important legal meetings. Voice notes, reminders, things I might need to review later. You knew I couldn't read documents anymore, Vanessa, but you forgot I could still listen." He pressed a button. A recording filled the room. Vanessa's voice came through first, low and impatient. "He's blind. Ellis will read what I tell him to read. Once Julian signs, I'll have full authority before the board can interfere." Then another voice, a man's voice, not Mr. Ellis. "And the maid?" Vanessa laughed softly. "She's nothing. If she sees anything, I'll say she stole from me. Who will they believe, Julian's fiancée, or a maid with a child?" Naomi's knees almost gave out. Mia began to cry silently against her shoulder. Julian stopped the recording. The room was deathly quiet. Vanessa took one step back. "You recorded me?" Julian stood slowly, one hand on the table for balance. "No," he said. "You recorded yourself in my study. The device was on the desk. You were too busy underestimating a blind man to notice." The board members looked disgusted. Mr. Ellis gathered the false documents like they were something dirty. Vanessa's mask cracked completely. "You don't understand," she hissed. "I gave up everything for you. I became your nurse, your guide, your prisoner in this dark house. You were never going to be the same man again." Julian's face hardened. "So you decided to take everything while pretending to love me?" "I was protecting my future. You mean stealing mine?" Vanessa looked toward the door, but the security guard had already stepped in front of it. Julian turned to him. "Call the police." Vanessa's eyes widened. "Julian, please." But his voice did not soften. Not another word. Then Mia lifted her tearful face and whispered, "Mr. J, Mommy didn't lie." Julian's expression changed. All the anger in his face softened into something protective. "I know, sweetheart," he said gently. "Your mommy told the truth, and so did you." Naomi began to cry then, not loudly, but deeply. The kind of tears that come when fear finally realizes someone powerful is not going to crush it. But Vanessa was not finished. As the guard reached for his phone, she suddenly grabbed the false document from the table and tore the last page in half. "If I go down," she said, her voice shaking with rage, "I'm taking all of you with me." And before anyone could stop her, she turned toward Naomi and Mia with a look so dangerous that Julian heard the fear in Naomi's breath. That was the moment he realized Vanessa's plan had failed, but her cruelty had not ended yet. Vanessa's hand tightened around the torn document as she glared at Naomi and Mia. For one terrifying second, Naomi thought she might run toward them. She pulled Mia behind her body, shielding her daughter with both arms. Mia began to cry harder, burying her face into her mother's uniform. Julian heard it. The tiny broken sound of the child who had just saved him. And something inside him went completely still. "Security," Julian said, his voice low, "remove her from this room." Vanessa laughed, but it shook. "You can't do this to me. I was the only one who stayed after your accident. I was the one people praised for loving you when you became blind." Julian turned his face toward her voice. "No," he said, "you stayed because you thought blindness made me easy to control." The words hit the room hard. Vanessa's face twisted. "You needed me." "I needed honesty," Julian said. "You gave me a performance." The security guard moved toward her, but Vanessa stepped back and pointed at Naomi again. "And what about her? You think she's innocent? She's been waiting for this. A poor maid with a child, standing close enough to make you feel sorry for her." Naomi's eyes filled with tears. She had been silent through insults before. She had swallowed shame because she needed work, because Mia needed food, because poor women learned early that defending themselves could cost them everything. But this time, Mia lifted her head and whispered, "Mama, don't be scared." Naomi looked down at her daughter. Then she looked at Vanessa. "My daughter told the truth," Naomi said, her voice shaking but clear. "And you tried to punish her for it. That is all this room needs to know." Julian's expression softened. Vanessa opened her mouth to answer, but the sound of police sirens cut through the rain outside. Within minutes, 2 officers entered the dining room. Mr. Ellis gave them the altered papers. The board members gave their statements. Julian handed over the recording device. Vanessa's confidence collapsed piece by piece. When the officers took her wrists, she turned to Julian one last time. "You'll regret this." Julian did not move. "The only thing I regret," he said quietly, "is not listening sooner." Vanessa was led out of Greystone Manor, her red dress disappearing through the doorway like the last stain of a lie leaving the house. After she was gone, the room stayed silent. Naomi wiped Mia's cheeks with trembling fingers. "I'm sorry, Mr. Cross. I never wanted her to get involved." Julian slowly sat back down, exhausted but calm. "She shouldn't have had to be brave," he said, "but she was." Mia looked at him with wet eyes. "Are you mad?" Julian's voice softened. "Not at you, sweetheart. She said Mommy was bad." "I know," Julian said. "And she was wrong." Naomi broke then. Tears slipped down her face as years of fear, humiliation, and quiet survival finally caught up with her. Julian reached toward the sound of her crying, not touching her without permission, just holding his hand out. "You and Mia protected me tonight," he said. "Now it's my turn to protect you." The next morning, Greystone Manor felt different. The false agreement was destroyed. Vanessa's engagement ring was returned through her lawyer. The board opened an investigation, and Mr. Ellis made sure every legal document in Julian's life was reviewed properly. But Julian's biggest decision had nothing to do with business. He called Naomi into the library, where Mia sat quietly on the carpet coloring a picture of 3 people under a big house. Naomi stood near the door, nervous. "Sir?" Julian smiled faintly. "You don't need to stand by the door anymore." She stepped closer. "I want you to leave the staff cottage," he said. Naomi's face went pale. "Are you firing me?" "No," he said gently. "I'm giving you the guest house near the East Garden, a real home for you and Mia. And if you want the position, I'd like you to become head of household operations, full salary, benefits, security. No one in this house will ever threaten your place again." Naomi covered her mouth. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes, Mommy," Mia whispered from the carpet. "Mr. J needs nice people." For the first time that week, Naomi laughed through her tears. Months passed. Julian learned to move through the mansion with more confidence. Naomi learned to stop lowering her eyes. Mia still ran into rooms at the wrong time, still asked questions too honest for adults, and still called him Mr. J. One evening, as rain tapped softly against the library windows, Julian found Naomi helping Mia hang a drawing on the wall. It showed Julian holding a cane, Naomi smiling beside him, and Mia standing between them with both arms stretched wide. "What is it?" Julian asked. Mia ran to him and placed the paper in his hands. "It's us," she said proudly. "I made your eyes awake in the picture." Julian smiled, emotion tightening his throat. Naomi watched him quietly. For the first time since the accident, Julian did not feel trapped in darkness. Because that night, a toddler had stopped him from signing away his future. But more than that, she had brought truth back into a house where lies had almost won.